Hello, my name is Vanessa Fiorante, and today we'll be taking a look at a condensed version of science, technology, and society through my mind map, mainly focusing on the linkage between science and society. I decided to separate each weekly topic into its own branch and use secondary branches to indicate the secondary topics for each unit. I also used a few tertiary branches to indicate examples and important discussion diary topics for each week. I also used a color-coordinated scheme as it is easy to distinguish each topic from one another this way. I decided to make my mind map flow in progression from week 1 to 13 because as we progressed through the term, we built on the following week's topic. I thought taking this approach to my mind map was important as it allows connections to be made within branches as well as between the weekly topics. To explain how my mind map flows, we will take a look at a few weekly topics. In the first week of the course, we discussed the idiom of co-production. I decided to place it at the top and center of my mind map. This was important to be placed here as the rest of the course functions off the idea of co-production, which explores the link between science and society and how they co-produce one another. Co-production is split into four main categories: emergence and stabilization, framing of controversy, intelligibility of products of science and technology, and enculturation of science and technology. Over the course of the term, each topic can relate back to at least one of these four categories, which is why I chose to display this in the top and center of my map. A main point that was discussed in one of my small group learning activities for this week was an example of co-production. This was how Africa's elephants transitioned from an endangered species to a manageable species because of an advancement in Africa's animal biology. To me, this was one of the most important topics of the course as it can be related to almost every topic and case study discussed afterwards. By placing it at the top and center of my map, it demonstrates the effect that all the topics following built off this central idea of co-production. We then move into week 2 and 3 where we discussed the Kuhnian Revolution, where our main focus was the emergence of paradigm science. Paradigm science in the Kuhnian Revolution mainly looked at how science should be done and how research actually took place. Paradigm science involves the pre-paradigm stage, normal science, crisis, and revolution. Paradigm demonstrates the effects of crisis and accumulated knowledge and how it builds up over time, leading us into our next topic of scientific controversies, mainly looking at the idea of symmetrical analysis and experimenter's regress. Both of these topics sometimes can lead to closing controversies. Overall, both the topics looked at, the Kuhnian Revolution and scientific controversies, explore the idea behind research and some aspects that impact research. We then move to week 5 of the course where we discuss the public understanding of science looking at the deficit model and the dominant model. The dominant model looks at how science is simplified so that way it is easier understood by the general public. This also could be known as popularization. We use the example of Cumbrian sheep farmers to bring the deficit model to life. In this case study, we discussed the farmers' constant distrust in the government, the scientists' failed attempts to listen to the farmers' knowledge, and the scientists going against the farmers' traditional ways of knowledge. This is an active example of credibility gaps as there is an active process of distrust between the scientists and the farmers. We then take a look at the idea of post-truth. This idea and the public understanding of science build on one another as they both represent a link between society and science through public knowledge. The idea of post-truth looks at the public's rejection of scientific knowledge. Although these two topics do seem similar, they also do differ in some components, as post-truth is a rejection of scientific knowledge, while the public understanding of science is how the public interprets scientific knowledge. We then discuss the idea of biomedicine in society. This was split up into two main concepts: biomedicalization and medicalization. Medicalization is when we take normal life processes and turn them into a medical diagnosis that must be treated using medication. In that week's small group learning activity, we used ADHD as an example, as in the past this was considered a behavior that had to be dealt with, but now it is a behavior that has to be masked using medication. We then turn to the idea of biomedicalization, which focuses on allowing technology-based scientific ideas into social concepts. Biomedicalization has 5 main processes, which include a new biopolitical economy of medicine, a new and intensifying focus on health, the techno-scientization of biomedical practices, the transformation of biomedical knowledge production, and transformation of the bodies. Following this topic, we look at the environment and gender through a scientific lens, both looking at how society and science impact these concepts. By grouping these topics next to one another, it is indicating that they all have influence on science and vice versa. By taking a look at just a few concepts, the flow of my mind map really comes to life as it indicates key concepts for each week and then makes connections between different subtopics and weekly topics. The way I've chosen to structure my mind map is in line with my brain's natural way of doing things, as it constantly progresses and builds on the last topic. By placing the topics in this order, it helps build a better understanding of each week's topics and groups the ones that coincide with one another. Personally, I get a better understanding of different topics by making connections and using prior knowledge while examining current topics, which is displayed in the way I chose to structure my mind map. Thank you for your time.